That night, in the small kitchen of a seemingly peaceful town, a chilling whisper shattered the silence. "Daddy is under the kitchen floor." It was the voice of a 4-year-old girl, her wide, trembling eyes carrying a truth the adults had tried so hard to bury. An investigation began, and each newly laid tile revealed a horrifying secret: a father murdered, a mother weighed down by guilt, and a childhood stolen. Would justice be served? Or would this be just another case buried in the shadows of an innocent-looking kitchen? A dull autumn morning draped over the town of Millstone as pale sunlight trickled onto the low rooftops, leaving behind glistening drops of dew on the window panes. A police car was parked in front of house number 23 at the end of Beechwood Street. Inside the small police station, Chief Inspector Ethan Rowe sat at his desk, hunched over a stack of unfinished case files. He was a middle-aged man with graying hair and a face weathered by decades of investigating everything from petty thefts to mysterious disappearances. A knock at the door made Ethan look up. The door swung open, and a young policewoman ushered in a thin, middle-aged woman whose worried expression and tight grip on a worn-out handbag revealed her anxiety. Beside her stood a little girl around 4 years old with soft brown hair, clutching a worn-out stuffed bunny. "This is Mrs. Linda Carver, a neighbor of the Holloway family," the young officer said. Ethan nodded and gestured for them to sit. Linda hesitated, pulling out a chair, her voice trembling. "I don't know if I should say this, but something's very strange." A cold glint flickered in Ethan's eyes. He had grown accustomed to such introductions. "What is it?" Mrs. Carver Linda swallowed hard, casting a glance at the girl beside her, and whispered, "It's about Ms. Serena Holloway's house. Her husband, Lucas. Holloway has been missing for 3 days now, but just now, little Ava here." She nodded to the child. "Said something to me. I can't forget." Ethan raised an eyebrow, his gaze shifting to the girl. Ava lifted her head, her large, dark eyes reflecting a mixture of fear and a disturbing maturity that no child should possess. In a gentle voice, Ethan asked, "What's your name, sweetheart?" Ava hugged the stuffed bunny tighter and spoke in a tiny voice. "My name is Ava. Ava." "Do you know where your daddy is?" Ava hesitated, her eyes welling up as though she might cry, then whispered, "Daddy's under the kitchen floor. Where the tiles are a different color. Daddy's cold." Outside the window, the wind rustled the crimson maple leaves. Ethan felt a chill crawl up his spine. He turned to Linda, who was trembling so hard her lips had gone pale. "We need to speak to her mother, immediately." Linda nodded, tears brimming in her eyes. "I'm so scared. I didn't sleep at all last night. Ava kept saying her daddy was cold." Ethan sighed, his eyes drifting thoughtfully to the fading light on Beechwood Street. A routine missing person case, now possibly turning into a horrifying murder. As the dim light of the afternoon faded, Chief Inspector Ethan Rowe stood in front of 23 Beechwood Street, his sharp eyes scanning every newly laid tile on the kitchen floor. Serena Holloway's house looked strangely normal, except for the tension that hung in the air, like a taut string about to snap. Serena opened the door, greeting Ethan and a few other officers with a faint smile. She wore a white blouse, her hair neatly tied back her calm eyes, so steady that it surprised Ethan. "I told you Lucas always disappears like this. Once he was gone for a whole week. But did you know that neighbors heard arguing and the sound of something breaking in the night he disappeared?" Ethan asked, not taking his eyes off her. Serena let out a sigh. "Every couple fights sometimes." Ethan looked around the kitchen, his gaze stopping on the floor tiles. Some of them looked distinctly newer than the others. He pointed. "You redid this section, didn't you?" Serena stiffened. Yes, I did it myself. There was mold under the floor, so I had to replace it." A young officer. Officer Jenna Myers held a USB drive given to her by a neighbor and handed it to Ethan. "This is footage from Mr. Elliot Freeman's front camera." They plugged the USB into a laptop, and the video appeared on screen. In the dim light of the security camera, Serena could be seen quietly carrying Ava out of the house around 2 a.m. When she returned, she was lugging a heavy bag of construction materials. "Can you explain this?" Ethan asked sternly. Serena pressed her lips together. "I took Ava to a friend's house to keep her away from the mold smell. And the materials. I wanted to fix the floor myself." Ethan folded his arms across his chest, his eyes full of suspicion. No purchase receipts, no contractor, no notice to the neighborhood manager and Ava. She said something very strange to the neighbors. Serena flinched, her voice trembling. "What do you mean?" Officer Myers spoke slowly. Ava said, "Her father was under the kitchen floor, under the tiles that looked different, and her daddy was cold." Serena's face went pale, her hands shaking. Ethan looked at her, his expression firm but calm. "We'll need to conduct an inspection tonight." Serena paused for a few seconds, then swallowed hard. "What? What are you going to do?" "A preliminary investigation," Ethan replied, signaling the forensics team. Outside, police lights flashed across the window, casting a worried glow on Ava's face as Officer Myers comforted her. Serena stood frozen in the kitchen, staring at the new tiles, her breath quickening, her hands clutching her blouse. The air in the house felt thick, as if something horrifying was about to be revealed. Ethan looked around the kitchen, where the yellow light cast shadows on the pale tiles, making them stand out starkly. He signaled to the forensics team and called Lieutenant Marcus Grant, his longtime colleague. "Marcus, I want you to bring the forensics team here immediately. Bring drills and ground-penetrating equipment. I want to check beneath this floor." Marcus's voice came through the phone lower than usual. "I guess this isn't just a simple case, is it?" "More than that," Ethan replied, his eyes still locked on Serena. Serena leaned against the counter, her hands gripping the marble edge until her knuckles turned white. She licked her lips, her eyes darting between the officers. I told you. Lucas always leaves for a few days. This time is no different." Officer Myers stepped closer, her voice gentle but firm. But that night, Ava heard her parents arguing, then a loud noise. After that, The floor started creaking. Serena's head snapped up, her eyes wide. She must have heard wrong. Ethan walked over to the kitchen counter, crouched down, and ran his hand over the pale tiles. The cement smell was still fresh. "You did this yourself, all by yourself," Serena stammered. "I watched some videos online. I couldn't afford a contractor." Outside, a second police car pulled up. Marcus and the forensics team entered. Flashlights swept across the kitchen. Marcus removed his gloves, knelt down, and tapped the floor lightly. A dull, heavy sound echoed, sending a chill down Ethan's spine. Marcus looked up at Ethan, his voice serious. "This floor's got issues, my friend. The cement hasn't even set completely." Serena trembled, her eyes wide as she stared at Marcus, and then turned to Ethan. "What are you going to do?" Ethan's voice was firm, leaving no room for doubt. "We're going to check. And you need to cooperate." "Serena." Serena collapsed into a chair, her hands clutching her head, her breath ragged as if she might burst into tears. "You don't understand." Ethan glanced toward the living room window, where Ava sat in Officer Myers's lap, still hugging the worn-out bunny. Under the harsh yellow light, she looked like a little angel in a hellish nightmare. He turned to Marcus, his voice resolute. "Start the check. Be thorough." Marcus nodded. The forensics team began preparing drills lights and evidence-gathering equipment. In that moment, Ethan knew the disappearance of Lucas Holloway had officially become a criminal case, and the cold truth beneath the kitchen floor was only a few drills away from being exposed. The sound of drilling pierced the quiet kitchen, blending with the flashlights illuminating the newly laid tiles and revealing patches of cement that hadn't fully dried. Serena Holloway sat in silence on the wooden chair, yet by the dining table her face pale and drained of color. Lieutenant Marcus Grant crouched low, gloved hands, steady eyes fixed on the drill as it dug deeper into the cement. A pungent mix of fresh construction material and long-standing mold filled the air, making it hard to breathe. Ethan Rowe stood behind Marcus, clutching his notepad tightly, his cold gaze locked on Serena. He knew that in just a few moments the veil of crime would be lifted. "Marcus, be careful," Ethan commanded. Marcus nodded and signaled to a young technician named Daniel Rivers. Daniel gently chipped away at the cracked cement, then shone his flashlight into the narrow gap. Suddenly he froze. "Sir, there's something down there." Marcus lowered his voice. "Use your hands. Easy." Daniel took a deep breath and cautiously reached down into the remaining cement. A second later, he recoiled, his hand trembling. In his hand was a piece of dark, wet fabric. "Oh my God." Marcus immediately leaned in for a closer look. The flashlight glared off a pale, stiff foot protruding from under the wrinkled cloth. The stench hit them hard, making Daniel gag. "It's a body," Marcus whispered heavily. Ethan stepped forward, his voice steady and deep. "Serena Holloway, is there anything you'd like to confess?" Serena trembled, her eyes brimming with tears, but holding back a sob. I didn't kill him. Ethan tilted his head, his voice low, but sharp as a blade. You mixed cement in the middle of the night. You laid these tiles yourself. You didn't call the police. You didn't keep any receipts. And Ava told us Daddy's under the kitchen floor. In the part where the tiles are different, Daddy's cold. Serena swayed, her face white as a sheet, her hands clutching the edge of the table. I just wanted... Her voice choked. Marcus swung his flashlight toward the floor, where the man's body had been revealed. The smell of death was overwhelming. The victim's head was bruised with a deep indentation. The dried blood, a dark, congealed streak. Ethan looked at Serena, his eyes a mix of sorrow and resolve. Lucas Holloway was struck from behind, unexpectedly, then wrapped in fabric, and buried under the floor. No signs of struggle. This was a premeditated murder. Serena shook her mouth agape, but no words came out. Just then, Officer Jenna Myers entered the room, holding a new USB drive from the forensics team. Sir, we've recovered the video from the kitchen camera. Ethan plugged the USB into the laptop on the table. The screen lit up the image, grainy but clear enough. Under the dim light, Lucas Holloway appeared suitcase in hand, turning his back to leave. Serena emerged behind him, holding something heavy. Before Lucas could turn back, Serena raised her hand, and the video froze on that moment. The room fell silent. Serena screamed, "I didn't mean to, I just wanted..." But Ethan raised his hand to stop her. He turned to Marcus, his voice hard as steel. "Arrest Serena Holloway for first-degree murder, concealment of a corpse, and inflicting severe psychological trauma on a child." Marcus nodded, snapping handcuffs onto Serena's wrists. The cold metal clicked sharply. In the living room, Ava hugged her stuffed bunny, her innocent eyes brimming with tears as she peeked through the doorway. A small, trembling voice broke the silence. "Mommy, why did you make Daddy cold?" Serena's sobs mixed with the autumn wind, like a belated confession echoing through the house. In the thick air of cement dust and the stench of death, every sound seemed to vanish, leaving only Serena's ragged breathing and Ethan's pounding heartbeat. Marcus signaled to a forensic officer named Nolan Carter, who crouched to examine the remaining shrouded parts of the body. Nolan carefully peeled away the fabric, then looked up at Ethan, his face pale. The victim's head has a deep indentation, looks like a strong blow from behind with a heavy object. The blood has dried long ago. Ethan nodded, his eyes never leaving Serena, his voice low. "How do you explain Ava saying you made her daddy cold beneath the kitchen floor?" Serena stammered. I didn't want..." She paused, her gaze vacant, her voice breaking. "He said he was going to leave me and take Ava away. Said I'd have nothing left." Ethan folded his arms, his voice firm. No one has the right to take another person's life. Serena, no one has the right to steal a child's father. Serena collapsed to the floor, her hair falling over her face. I just wanted to keep her with me." Beside Ethan, Marcus held up a small evidence bag. "This is the victim's phone. We recovered a text message." His voice was cold as ice. Lucas texted his lawyer about filing for divorce and taking Ava. But the last message sent from his phone read, "If you leave me, I'll disappear forever." Ethan inhaled deeply, his eyes a mix of sorrow and anger. "That last message, Serena, was sent by you after you killed your husband. You staged the entire scene to cover up your crime." Serena lifted her head, tears streaming down her cheeks. I was afraid of losing everything." "And now you've lost it all," Ethan said firmly. He turned to Marcus. "Read the formal charges." Marcus opened his notebook, his voice steady and unwavering. "Serena Holloway, Nita, you are under arrest for first-degree murder, concealment of a corpse, falsifying messages, and causing severe psychological trauma to a child." The handcuffs clinked coldly. Serena bowed her head, her shoulders trembling. Outside the door, Ava stood still, tears streaming down her face as she watched her mother being led away. Officer Myers wrapped an arm around the little girl, her eyes filled with compassion. As the autumn wind rustled through the kitchen window, Ethan watched Serena, the woman who had turned her kitchen into a tomb, his eyes heavy with sorrow. "This isn't just a murder case, Marcus," Ethan murmured, his voice choked. "It's a verdict that ends a child's innocence." Marcus tightened the strap of his helmet, his eyes cold as he looked at the broken cement floor. "And we'll do everything we can to bring justice to that child." Serena Holloway sat slumped on the cold steel chair in the holding cell, her eyes sunken and vacant. The clinking of the metal chains rattled every time she moved, like the ticking of the sentence she had crafted for herself. Outside the cell, Ethan Rowe and Marcus Grant sat at the conference table, a thick case file stacked between them, brimming with evidence. On the large screen, the final video played again, Serena holding a heavy iron skillet, striking Lucas Holloway down. Ethan sighed, his voice hoarse. She didn't just kill her husband, Marcus. She killed Ava's childhood, too. Marcus nodded, his expression tense. Nolan Carter also confirmed there were no defensive wounds. That blow was fatal, unexpected. Ethan closed his eyes, his voice low. "We need to make sure Ava gets the care she needs. She's been through too much already." Outside, Ava sat on a bench in the police station lobby, clutching her tattered stuffed bunny, her large dark eyes staring blankly. Officer Myers gently sat down next to her. "Ava, your grandmother, Marion Carter, is on her way to take you home, okay?" Ava looked up, her innocent eyes tinged with exhaustion. "Is Mommy coming with me?" Myers squeezed Ava's shoulder gently, her eyes glistening. "Mommy has to go away for a while, sweetie. But you still have your grandmother, and everyone here will protect you." In another room, Ethan and Marcus spoke with a child protection attorney about custody arrangements. Marion Carter Lucas's mother had been granted temporary guardianship. She was a kind woman with silver hair, but her eyes glowed with quiet determination when she entered the room. to get Ava her trembling arms opened wide. "Ava, come to Grandma." Ava hesitated for a moment, then ran into her arms, sobbing uncontrollably. Ethan watched the scene, his throat tight. "It's going to be okay, Marion," he said warmly. "As long as you love her and help her forget this nightmare." Marion wiped her tears, her eyes resolute. "I promise you, Ethan, I'll do everything I can to help her grow up like a normal child." In the holding cell, Serena's tears fell silently as her head hung over the metal table. She knew every defense she could muster now was just a sigh in the darkness. She had turned the kitchen into a tomb, and her own heart into a prison with no key. Marcus closed the case file, his eyes unwavering. "Our job is to bring the criminal to light, and to protect what's left of Ava's future." Ethan looked toward the window, where the afternoon sun was setting. Justice isn't just about punishing the guilty Marcus. It's about giving a child back her childhood. In the silent room, only the sound of the wind remained. A dark chapter was coming to a close. The small conference room at Millstone Police Station glowed under tired yellow lights. Ethan Rowe placed the thick case file on the table, tapping the folder marked Lucas Holloway case. He looked up at Marion Carter, sitting across from him. "Mrs. Marion Ava's temporary custody will officially transfer to you until the court finalizes the paperwork," Ethan said, in a calm, warm voice. "Do you accept?" Marion looked up, her eyes determined, though still glistening with tears. "Even if there's only a sliver of hope, I won't let that child suffer anymore. She's already lost too much." Ethan nodded, feeling the weight of her words. "I believe you'll do well." Outside the room, Ava sat on a wooden bench, clutching her worn-out bunny, her eyes distant. Officer Myers sat beside her, resting a gentle hand on her small shoulder. "Ava, your grandmother will take care of you and bring you home." Ava turned, her voice trembling. "But will Mommy be locked up?" Myers swallowed her tears and gently smoothed Ava's tangled hair. "Mommy has to face what she did, Ava. But you didn't do anything wrong. You're very brave." Ava pressed her lips together, hugging the bunny tighter. Meanwhile, in the interrogation room, Serena sat with her head bowed on the cold metal chair. Her haggard face and unkempt hair made her look like a ghost. Across from her was her defense attorney, Gordon Fields, a middle-aged man whose serious gaze betrayed a trace of pity. Serena Gordon said slowly, "Here's my final advice. If you confess fully, the court might consider reducing some of the charges. But you need to be honest about why." Serena lifted her tear-streaked face, her voice hoarse. "I didn't want to lose her. I was afraid. I'd already lost everything." Gordon paused, then sighed quietly. Sometimes holding on to what we love most is exactly what destroys it. Serena dropped her head, tears streaming down. She knew every defense was now just ashes among the rubble. In the long hallway of the station, Ethan emerged, his eyes weary, yet resolute. Marcus was waiting, case file in hand. "The charges are clear, Ethan. Enough evidence for first-degree murder, concealment of a corpse, and severe psychological harm to a child. Ethan nodded. That kitchen floor won't hide anything anymore. Marcus exhaled, looking into the distance. But Ava's pain, that's still there. Ethan clenched his fist. Yes. And we'll do everything to make sure she gets to live like a real child. Outside, Marion led Ava through the night's glow. The little girl looked up at the starry sky and whispered, "Grandma, can Daddy hear me?" Marion squeezed her hand, her voice trembling but full of love. "Daddy's right here in your heart. And there, he always hears you." Ethan watched them disappear into the darkness. To him, the case was legally closed. But for Ava, this dark chapter had only just begun to heal. He sighed. The yellow light fell on the case file, a reminder that justice isn't just about closing a case. It's about protecting the children who have already lost too much. On a quiet winter morning shrouded in mist, the sunlight peeked through the gray clouds, casting a gentle glow on the small house at the end of Beechwood Street. Inside the freshly painted pale yellow room, Ava sat at her little desk, clutching a red crayon tightly in her hand. She was drawing a small house with a bright window beside it, the figure of a smiling man holding a red balloon, and an elderly woman with silver hair arms, wide open to embrace her. Marion stood silently behind her, tears brimming in her eyes, overflowing with love. "Daddy is always with you, Ava," she whispered. "In your heart, in your dreams, and in the things you draw." Ava looked up, her eyes shining like stars. "Yes, Grandma. Daddy's not cold anymore. In my heart, he's smiling." Marion gently squeezed her shoulder, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I promise I'll always be here for you, to protect you and to love you." Elsewhere in the courtroom of the Illinois State Court, Serena Holloway stood in a gray prison uniform, her head bowed before the judge. The judge's voice rang clear as he read the verdict. "Serena Holloway, you are sentenced to life imprisonment without parole for first-degree murder, concealment of a body evidence tampering, and causing severe psychological trauma to a child." Serena said nothing, only stared silently at the floor, where the morning light cast a cold glow. Outside the courthouse, Ethan Rowe and Marcus Grant stood side by side holding the closed case file. Ethan sighed, his gaze distant. "Marcus, we've done our part, but the pain of a child, no file can ever close that completely." Marcus patted his shoulder gently. "But at least justice has been served. Ava has a chance to start over, back in Millstone." Marion led Ava into the garden. The sun had finally broken through. Ava held the red balloon high in the air, her hair tousled by a gentle breeze, her eyes sparkling with hope. "Daddy can see you now, Ava," Marion said softly, her voice warm. Ava smiled, tears glittering in the sunlight. "Daddy always sees me. In my heart, he's not cold anymore." In his office at the police station, Ethan sat in the dim light that fell on stacks of thick case files. He looked at Ava's drawing, the image of a father, holding a red balloon carefully taped to the wall. Ethan thought to himself, sometimes justice isn't just in the verdict. Justice is when a child gets her smile back. Outside, the wind carried the soft scent of spring, as if signaling a new beginning, and at the end of Beechwood Street in the small house, a tender heart had finally found a bit of peace.